Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Today, I'm going to talk about Angular and more precisely the migration from Angular to Angular 10 from to 17. Sorry. But before getting started, I want to tell you a little story. Almost 10 years ago, or more than 10 years ago, I went for the first time in an IT conference. And because we are in Belgium, you probably guess what is it? It was Devoxx Belgium in 2013. And back then, I went to a talk about front-end. And just to put it in context, in 2013, when we talk about front-end, we talk about AngularJS. AngularJS had a couple of years. React was quite new. So we are in this context. We don't have every 2 weeks a new framework for front-end. We're not there yet. And at the time, I went to a talk speaking about how you can build front-end and how you manage and make it evolve. And the speaker told us that you're going to create a new web app, you're going to add new feature, do maintenance, but probably one thing you won't do will be upgrade your dependency. And today, I want to show you that's no longer the case, and you should upgrade. And that's not that hard. You will find some hard stuff to do, but you can totally do it. My name is Loïc Magnette. I'm a senior developer for a Belgian consultancy company called Embark. I'm also the father of an almost 3 years old little girl. And I'm one of the co-organizers of the Belgian Java user group. So if you're interested in Java, you should probably check that out because we have an event almost every month. And under there is all my social media contact. If you want to get in touch or if you're stuck in your Angular migration, don't hesitate. And let's get started. Does anyone know how this week can be special for any Angular developer? No? It's special because normally this week, Angular 18 will be released. So this talk may be at the right time, so you can also migrate to Angular 18 just after that. So now let's start our journey. Does anybody here is using a version of Angular older than 10? Nobody. Yes, good thing. Is anybody using something older than 15? Yes, 2. Okay, you probably learn more than the one that are on more recent versions. So when you want to start a migration for Angular, the first step you should do is simply go to update.angular.io. On update.angular.io, we'll show you all the steps you should do to migrate your application. The first thing you need to do is provide the from and the to version. And if you use it, you probably quickly realize that it only allows you to migrate one major version at a time. And you might think, oh, but I want to migrate 2 or 3. And let's be honest, that's really a bad idea. I did it for the CFP. At some point, I had a warning in one version. I was like, that's not bad, just a warning. I tried to migrate to another version. And instead of a warning in the next version, I got a ton of errors. So please migrate one major version at a time. And it will allow you also to be sure that everything is working and you're not trying to figure out what went wrong between 2 versions. So when you have this to-do list, the first thing you should check is the node version. Because depending on your current Angular version, you should use a specific node version. All of that is documented in the Angular documentation. But if you have to have more than one node version, I think you don't want to do install or playing with link to bind it to the right runtime. You probably want a tool to do that. And that's one of my recommendations. Please use a tool to do that. If you only need one for versioning for a node NVM is a great tool. It allows you to have multiple versions of Node and switch easily between them. If you want to do it for more than just Node, for instance, Java or Python or I don't know, something like ASDF might also do the trick because it will allow you to switch between different runtimes. So when you do that, you can already start to do the migration. And the next step in the Angular documentation is to run an ng update. And usually, that's where I continue with slides. But I have some time, so we're going to try to migrate the CFP app from the current Angular version to the next one. We are already at 17, so it will be only a minor version, but I think it's more interesting if we can see what's happening there. So if I'm going to my, and apparently IntelliJ decided to crash between, so we'll restart IntelliJ. And yeah, here we go. And the presentation mode. So you can see everything. So I'm just gonna open my terminal here. So you can probably see what's happening. So if in my current project, if I run an ng update, and if I correctly type it, it will scan my project and give me some advice on what I should update. And as I said, it goes from Angular 17.2 to max 17.5, so that's not a big update. But what you need to do is basically run all this. I have a shortcut just to avoid retyping everything. But basically what I'm telling it is to say, okay, update all those packages. And all those packages are the ones that are provided just right there and here. And just doing that, it will run the update for me. In the meantime, I think we can go back to the slide. And here we go. And apparently, PowerPoint doesn't like that. And no. OK, let's go down like this. Yeah, no, you don't want. Oh, yeah, that's it. So that's what already we've done. We're leaving everything running because everybody knows that when you install npm things, basically you download all the web. So I don't want to lose your time on that. So let's get a bit deeper on what is ng update. ng update is just a part of the Angular schematics. And if you do Angular, you probably know a couple of them already, because you usually use ng-new to create a new project, ng-generate or ngg to generate components, services, and things like that. But there is less known schematics, such as add to add a dependency, and update to do the update of Angular. And what does exactly this ng update do? Basically, if you go in the documentation, and I know we don't like to read documentation, but you just need to look at this part. And this part, what it tells you is when you run ng update, Angular go through your package JSON, look for all your dependency, and for all those dependencies, gonna check the package JSON of those dependency and look for a specific key in it called ng update. And if it exists, it will run the script. So basically, normally that's where you land. And if I was lucky enough here, I can run my application. It will take some time to build, but normally it should run. My migration is done, so let's see. And of course, it's going to take some time because I'm in demo mode and oh, nice. Thank you. And yeah, I misclicked. And it's totally not going. Yeah, that's right. And it totally compiles and runs, so everything is good. So we would say, nice. Why this guy still need 40 minutes? It's easy. And that's where everything's it's not going as we plan usually, because I'm going to be kind of be bold for this. As I said, Angular 18 is supposed to release this week. So what's happening if I'm trying to migrate to Angular 18? So basically, I can run the ng update. I'm just using the --minus next to say I want the next version, not the current one, because it's still a release candidate at this point. It's going to go there and give me a lot of things to update. And apparently, yeah, it's there, but it's not readable. And that's why I try to. Can you open something else and maybe? No, you decided that small is good. I will not be able to copy paste, and I don't want to right type everything there. But basically, if you run this on Angular 18 and you try to rerun it, you will get an error. Why? Because, of course, we don't have just Angular. We have all of those dependencies that we need to be able to update to Angular 18 in this case. So if I go back here, and yeah. So usually when developers talk about dependency, they hope their dependency looks like this. A beautiful library, everything is at the right place, just one time every time, no issue, perfect. But in reality, most of our projects look more like this. Because we have dependency and our projects are not like our POC project. Our project have a life and spent 2, 3, 5 years. And during this time, multiple developers went through and added their personal favorite library, added some tools they think they need. And basically, you need to know exactly what's in it before migrating, because otherwise you're trying to migrate something you don't know. So the first step would be to know exactly what's in your project. And to do that, you can just use npm, because if you use npm, you can do npm ls-all, and it will generate your dependency tree. Just like you can do it with Maven in Java, it will give you the full dependency tree. With this tool, you can also look for a specific dependency. In this case, I look for TypeScript, and I can do npm ls TypeScript, and it will give me where TypeScript is placed in my dependency. So that's great. Now I know what's in my project. Time to do some cleanup. Because what I didn't do when I started my migration was looking at all those dependencies. I took for granted that everything was there for a reason. But I quickly realized that there was dependency there for some reasons, and they are not needed anymore. And it's way easier to migrate only what you need than to try to migrate all the stuff that somebody thought it needed at some point and it's not useful anymore. So the first step would be just remove those dependencies you don't need. Then maybe a look at how outdated is all your dependency. If you use npm outdated, it will give you the list of all your dependency with the newest version based on the semver in your package, so just what you allow, and also the latest. Doesn't mean you need to take the latest and replace it in your package JSON. That's a really bad idea. But it will give you at least an idea of how far you are from being up to date. And then you start playing just like a cat. Why just like a cat? Because what you're going to do is change the dependency, because when you try to npm I, it will say, no, this dependency requires this version, so you need to update it. You're going to change this version and rerun npm I, and you're back again. Basically, a bit like a cat playing with a wool ball. You're going to go slowly and unravel this ball until there is no more issue and you can migrate. And what it ends up looking like is something like that in your package JSON. And you just see a part of it. But your package JSON is going to change a lot with all those changes. And one thing I would recommend when you do migration is to do some cleanup. Basically, remove your node modules so you don't have any cache of package that you don't need. Remove the Angular cache, that's the .angular. And why remove the package log.json? It's because simply I'm trying to upgrade. I don't want my package logs telling me, oh, you want to go Angular 16, but in here I say 15. No, I don't want that, so I remove it. And basically what's going to happen, you're going to try an npmi, get an issue, remove everything, update something, npmi, and go over and over again until it works. But of course, if it was simple as that, again, I still have 35 minutes. It wouldn't make any sense. When you migrate, you have dependency, and those dependencies evolve around, with time. It means API change. And at some point, you're going to need to migrate those APIs. Because if the developer or the community maintaining this dependency did not think of a migration plan, you will need to rewrite stuff. Or if you're lucky, you just need to change some imports. And that's what we had on the CFP. We had some dependency for Firebase, and luckily for us, they just added a legacy part, and we could use that and not change all our code. But that's something that you need to think about. Again, talking about dependency, I got a funny thing. Between Angular 11 and 12, one of my dependencies was available for Angular 11.0 and 12.0. But when you migrate, you don't really look at the minor version. And basically, my project was in 11.2. And my NPM was telling me, no, you cannot install that. This dependency is only available for 11.0. And because I knew that it was also available for 12, so probably this dependency could go on and support Angular properly, I followed the wisdom of a little green guy. And I used the -- force. Simply to say, OK, in my case, I have only one dependency blocking me. I know it's still supported in the next version of Angular, so I'm going to try it and do the npmi with the -- force. You shouldn't do that, to be honest. 95% of the time, you shouldn't use that. But I was in this 5%. Basically, I had one dependency. I was pretty sure it will be working with my 11.2 because it was compatible with 12 also. And that was the easy way to say, OK, does it work? Yes. And if it wasn't working, I knew exactly where was the problem because there was only one dependency I was forcing here. But basically, that's where my trouble gets me. And that's not the worst. Multiple times during this migration, I felt like this boat, stuck on the beach, no way to go back in the sea. Why? Because my dependencies were playing tricks on me. Basically, for some times, I had dependency where a component went missing, or the whole dependency went missing. And when in those cases, you need to find a way to get through and migrate. The easiest part of those two cases were basically when I got this component that went missing. Basically, I migrate from, I think, 15 to 16. And I realized, OK, it's not building because there is a component that's missing. And it's not just a button, let's be honest. It was a full calendar with a lot of features and things like that. So I went, OK, why is it missing now? Went to the doc, and basically the library told us, we don't support this anymore. I was like, OK, and I know what I can do. Luckily, basically, they just wrapped another component, another library. So I could find by the name something similar. So I quickly just swap it out, just install the new dependency. I had to do a little trick somewhere, but it looks great. Everything was building. I went through the app. Everything looks fine. But one issue is I did manual testing. And basically, what happened? I missed the place where it didn't work. And because this component is used in HTML, and HTML doesn't complain if you put argument that does not exist or it doesn't understand, I didn't realize that some part of the application went totally wrong. So one advice is, I know it's front-end, and people think you don't need tests for front-end. I would argue the opposite. You should have tests, just to test at least the logic of your components, and to have a safety net when you do migration, you change stuff. Because if I had those automated tests, at some point I would have a red flag saying me, that doesn't work at all. And that's one of the lessons learned. We need to have automated tests. In this case, the solution was quite easy because those components were used in really a few components, so we had to rebuild a part of the application to use the new component, but there was no missing feature after that. It was just rebinding or rebuilding some little configuration. I told about another case where a dependency went missing. Basically, I was starting my migration between Angular 10 and 11, and already something went wrong because a dependency was not available for Angular 11. My IDE didn't find a new version. I went to NPM, no trace of a new version. So I went to GitHub looking for the projects, see if there is anything new there. And I landed on this message. Basically, the dependency that this project were using was no longer supported for more than 2 years when I started the migration. So I had basically two choices. The first one was cloning the repository, do the migration for this dependency, and release a version for Angular 11, 12, and so on till 17. It would take me some time to do that, and I was worried about something else. If it's not the only one in my package that goes like that, I'm going to migrate a ton of other dependency. So I choose to go the easiest route, not the cleanest, let's be honest. I went, cloned the repository, and copy-pasted all the code in my project. Did a few tweaks on my project to see, okay, I need to replace all the imports and things like that. But I was lucky enough that it worked quite well. And surprisingly, I didn't have to change this code anymore for any other Angular version. And when I look in the code, I realize that most part of this code could be replaced with other library at some point. But the goal here was to go migrate and reach the newest version. So after that, we can rebuild and rearrange everything so we don't have this copy-paste living there. And then I reached a point where I couldn't understand what was happening. I did an upgrade, and PMI went fine. I was happy. I'll start the application, doing a simple ng serve, and get an error about something called post CSS. I was, okay, what is this post CSS? I never seen this in my dependency. So, lucky enough, I knew this nice tool, the npmls. So I did the npmls with post CSS, looking for my dependency. And it looks great. It's installed. It's everywhere. Does anybody spot an issue here? Yeah, exactly. Just right there. And basically, I had that. And I'm a Java developer before doing front-end stuff. And as a Java developer, when I saw this issue, I was like, oh, that's bad. Because any Java developer knows if you have 2 times the same jar in your class path, you can get some strange behavior that you don't like. So I was worried. Okay, I have this issue. Do I have any other like that? Because that's worrying. How can I find that? And again, NPM has a solution to that. you have npm find dupes. And if you run it on your project, and in my case, it clearly states you have an issue here. You have conflicting peer dependency. So, okay, I have an issue. I have two different versions of the same thing. So I went looking, okay, who's importing this stuff? Can I upgrade it because that's not mine? No, I couldn't, because basically everybody was fighting for the right version. So again, Java developer thinks, can I exclude it? Because with Maven, I just exclude one of them and everything is fine. And that's when I discovered that with npm, you cannot exclude a dependency. Nice. How do I fix that? But happily, npm thought about that. There is a command called npm dedupe. Does anybody ever saw that? Yeah, that was my case also. So to explain what it does, just a simple example. I have a dependency A with dependency B and C, and B and C depends on the dependency D, but with different version. So basically, my issue. When you run npm dedupe, what you try to do is to move up every dependency you can, so when it goes through the dependency, it will take this one and not the transitive one. If you run it on your project, like I did, what will change? Nothing in your package JSON. It's only in your package lock. Your package lock gonna grow a bit, but it will fix the issue. After that, everything was working fine. And the most interesting part is I had to do that once. And when I migrate and to the next Angular version, I remove my package lock. So no more dedupe or anything, no more issue. So basically, I landed up on something going wrong at the wrong time. Because I tried to replicate it before this presentation, getting to the right commit, couldn't do it anymore. Basically, I landed on this issue when two dependencies were wrong. And if you had the same issue maybe a month later, there was no more issue because the dependencies were updated. So that was probably the worst issue I got during this migration. But there was one that was quite minor in our case. It was about styling, because you migrate stuff, and at some point, some components might change how you're supposed to style them. And in our case, it was not bad. We had two components doing something wrong, but easy. But if you talk about Angular, there is one case where developers struggles. It's when we talk about Angular material, because Angular material did a migration, a change between Angular 15 and 16. And if you have a highly customized application using Angular material, you might end up having a hard time migrating. They, of course, provide something to help you migrate along the way. There is a schematic to help you migrate, and that's good. But I know from some colleagues that had this issue, if you have something really, really highly customized, it's not enough. And basically, your styling you might have to redo it all over again. And that's really a pain for any developer. One thing I've learned chatting with other people and with other frameworks, tools for front-end, that's basically always the case. Angular Material is a great example for that, and they try to do something for it. But if you have highly customized styling for a component that's provided by someone else, at some point you might break something because you cannot do backward compatibility and you don't know what the developer did. Because let's be honest, when you customize styling, you have at least 3 ways to do it with HTML, CSS, some custom JavaScript going through your code or something like that. So nobody can prevent this kind of issue. but you need to be aware of it. And then we basically arrive at Angular 17. And you could say, great, it's done. But let's be honest, it's not done, because you still have some renovation to do in your project. Because you migrate through that, and at some point, some code became deprecated, and you need to update it. And so we had a couple of to-dos to include. And in those to-dos, there was some new stuff coming from Angular, something like standalone components, input binding, signals, all the new control flow coming with Angular 17. And again, Angular has a solution for that. It's called schematics. And if you look at all the demo about those migration, they all go great. But that's the demo world. And I try to migrate to standalone components. And because the project is complex, contains a lot of code, and some legacy code, basically I couldn't just run the schematics. I run it just for the shared module in the application, and already that could create problems for me. So you could say, okay, maybe that's a problem in the way the application was built. Yeah, maybe there is some stuff there. But because all those applications with Angular are quite complex, those schematics cannot fix all your problems for you. And if you can migrate with schematics, great for you. And I would say try it. Especially for standalone component, try it on your shared module. You might get some performance improvement out of the box. But if those schematics doesn't work for you, I would suggest doing something more like this. And that's what we do on projects. Instead of trying to migrate a bunch of code, when you open a new component and you need to update it, do the change you can do. Switch it to standalone components. Maybe change to new control flow if you can. Just bit by bit, update your project. That way you're way more in control of what's happening in your application, how you update it, how you fix it. And that's probably the best way to do it if you have a large and complex code base and those schematics doesn't work for you. As you might have guessed from what I've told you until now, a couple of times I felt just like that during this migration. Why? Because I encountered problems that I have never seen. Issue that I couldn't imagine happened. The npm dedupe is a great example of that. It's been almost 10 years I did Angular stuff. It's the first time I had to use that. So what can you think of all that? And when you end up on those problems, you might think, I can Google my solution. I can ask my colleagues. I can look on Stack Overflow. I did all trees. And sometimes I had no answer. And I know you probably have enough of AIs. But AI is an incredible rubber duck. In the meaning, it won't give you a right answer, let's be honest. It only will give you wrong answer, but it has a superpower. It's really naive in the way it thinks. It thinks, basically. It will show you doors that you never imagined you might need. And because those are there, you might think, oh, I didn't think about that. Let me try it. And when you try it, you get something slightly different. And you might think, that may be something there. And you chat again with your AI and give you a slightly different solution. And by those little steps, you finally realize, oh, that's my issue. That's how I can fix it. So use it not like the solution to your problem, but use it as a rubber duck that knows a lot more than any of your colleagues, but doesn't know how to use it, basically. When you do migration, you don't really it's not really fun, let's be honest. Updating a package JSON, I hope nobody likes it. We shouldn't do that. And to ease the burden of doing that, there is tools that you can use. They won't do everything for you, but they will help. Just to name two of them, there is Dependabot and Renovate. Dependabot is only available for GitHub. Renovate can do a bit more than Dependabot, and you can use it on a lot of different repositories. And what those tools can do is scan your project, your package JSON, and look for updates. And say, oh, there is update for that. And they can also create for you merge requests or pull requests, saying, oh, you should probably update this dependency. And they can also basically, and apparently my cursor doesn't want to work here. Yeah, it's working there. Yeah. It will show you the dependency and the change you need to do, give you the link to everything, and you could even go further if you have just a patch version and all your CI/CD is green. Why do you need to look at it? If you can trust in your test and your CI/CD, it could go straight to deploy. It means your project is updating itself without you really knowing, without having to touch anything, and probably it's working. Personally, I think that's really great. If I don't have to work for something like that, I'm happy about it. You just need to be careful with one thing. Dependabot and Renovate are great for just dependency, but they cannot probably do migration like ngupdate does. That's one of the discussion I think is still pending, is can you integrate those tools with ngupdate? It would be great, but again, if you migrate major version, you might want to take a look at what's happening there. But could be nice. And we basically reached the end of this journey, this migration. But I want you to remember three things. We will talk about a lot of things, but only three, I think that's the most important stuff. The first one, when you migrate, only migrate one major version at a time. I know that feels like it's a dumb advice, but that's a really important one. Because if you try to do more than one version, you're going to end up in a world of pain, let's be honest, at some point. If you're lucky, it will work for one version, but at some point, you're going to have issues with that. And so do it one version at a time, and you don't need to migrate 7 versions like I did. You can just do one at a time every 6 months, but do it one at a time. Another thing, and let's be honest, I'm not a TDD advocate, but write tests, please. Having tests is a safety net when you do migration. When you edit code, you maintain code, that's a way to be sure that if you change something, you're a bit more certain that everything's still working. Doesn't mean that everything's still working, but you have kind of someone on your shoulder checking for you that everything is still working. And you would be surprised how many times those tests have just saved me because it was building, it looks great, and for one edge case, I could not realize that it wasn't working. And when I do go through the application, clicking everywhere, you can be certain I'm going to forget something. I'm human. I forget things. But if I write test, and once it's written, I don't need to remember. It's there, it's written, it will run every time. Great. Last but not least, plan your upgrades. Because the worst case scenario is, we need to upgrade. Yeah, but we don't have time right now. We'll do it in 3 months. And in 3 months, because of course we're working for production, we don't have time, we will do it in 3 months. And you do that a couple of times, and instead of migrating one version, you need to migrate 10. And at that point, you will say, we won't migrate, there is too much to do. We won't do that, that's not important. Everything is still working, we don't know that. And you will end up like a COBOL developer, basically. Still using old things that nobody wants to touch. Because, let's be honest, if tomorrow we offer you a job and everybody tells you, you can use Angular 5, I'm sure you're all happy about that. Or not. So, plan it, and it doesn't mean you need to run with the latest version, because being on the bleeding edge, like the names suggest, you might bleed. So you maybe don't want to be there. But I have clients where they say, we are okay to run the latest version -1. And when they migrate, a new release is there, they migrate to a new one. And that's totally okay. But that way, they have a policy to migrate, to update, to be sure that everything is fine, and they don't have a backlog of 10 versions again. I know that it's easy for me to say, because when you go to the client and you tell them, I need to upgrade my Angular version, the question from your product owner of the client is, yeah, what's in it for me? And the answer is generally, you won't see a change. It's not happy about that, especially if you say, it's going to take me 5 or 10 days, so maybe you're going to lose someone during your sprint. Yeah, I know, doesn't look great. But at some point, those 5 or 10 days that he invests there might cost him a lot more because, there's no more patch of security and there's an issue. And you know you need to migrate 5 versions. And that's going to be really painful. I will end up here. There is the QR code with my slides there. Again, all my social media. I have a bunch of stickers here, so if you want to grab some, come, and they are free. Thank you for your attention. If you have questions, we have a couple of minutes left, so feel free.